Okay, so let's just bow our heads for opening prayer. Wonderful Father, it's so much a joy to be able to pray to you and to know that you hear us, you're concerned for us, you've already answered the prayers that we have for these people that we're praying for, and we ask as we open your word today that your Spirit will guide us and lead us in Jesus' name. Amen. A group of scientists went to God one day and they said, God, we're thankful for your service and appreciate what you've done, but we've advanced so far now that we feel we no longer need you as part of our lives. And over the last several decades we've made huge advances in science. We can now make babies in test tubes, we can now genetically modify foods, we can replace natural food with synthetic food and that man can live off and animals can live off, and it's all very good. And God said, okay, that's so, is it? And they said, yes, we can do all these things. And he said, okay, well, what about you can show me, demonstrate to me that I'm not needed in your lives by creating a man as I did Adam in the beginning, out of the dust of the ground and breathing life into that person. If you can do that, then I'll withdraw. And the scientist said, okay, that's good, we're up for the challenge. And so God went and got a scoop of dirt and moulded it into the shape of a man and breathed into its nostrils the breath of life, and that dirt became a living being. And the scientist said, that is impressive, that is so good. And they said, okay, let's go. And so they went over and they grabbed a bucket of sand, and God said, hey boys, get your own dirt. Alright? No, nowhere near it. And that's what we're looking at today. So John 1, from verses 1 through to 5. And it begins, in the beginning. Have we read that from somewhere else?
Genesis 1.
Genesis 1:1. That said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Notice how John says it. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was what?
With God.
With God.
With
So
God.
not, the Word was not the one true God. The Word was with God. That means if I'm with Christine, I say, and there's Christine, and I was with Christine, but I wasn't Christine, I was human like Christine. Okay? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This is where people get very confused. Very confused. So we looked last week and we saw that everything was made after its what?
Kind.
After its kind. So when God begat his Son out of his own essence, out of his own being, then what came out was what? Divine. A divine being. Just as when my son was born, he wasn't born something different, he was born a human, just like his father. But he wasn't me. And I think I've shared before, sometimes his friends would come to our place and they'd say, oh, you're just like Jai. And I'd say, no, Jai's just like me. Get it right. So there's the Father, he begets the Son, and the Son says, this is my Father, this is my God. And I go to my Father and your Father, and I go to my God and your God. So who are we to worship? The Father. Jesus said, when you pray, pray our Father. The same Father that he prayed to on earth is the same Father that we pray to. Okay, but notice what happens here. It says the Word was with God, and the Word was God, a divine being. The same, who's that referring to?
The same word.
The same Word was when? In the beginning with God. So there were two beings in the beginning of Genesis 1:1. Because remember, by Genesis 6, they say, let us make man in our image. What's the image? Father, Son. That's why the begats are so prevalent throughout the scriptures, because it's the begats, the father who begat so-and-so, and he begat so-and-so, and he begat so-and-so. That gives us a record from Adam all the way through to today. So we can know our heritage, know where we come from. So the same word was in the beginning with the Father. All things were made by him. Who? The Son. It's the Word. All things. The reference earlier was to the Word. The same was in the beginning. All things were made by him. Right? And without him was not anything made that was made. Everything that was made by the Word. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. Okay, so this is where we get the concept from, what is it, Psalm 30 or Proverbs 30, one of those two, where it talks about the architect and the master builder. So the picture I have, in the beginning, which we looked at last week, there was water across the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. So who's hovering? It's the architect with his master builder. So the architect, and I don't know if you've ever been to a building site where an architect and a builder are there together, what the architect has in his head is a picture of what he wants. And he's saying to the builder, now you build it. But what I want to see at the end is the picture that I have in my head. I'll put it down on paper with detailed plans of what you have to do at each step to get the end result. And the builder says, yep, right, fine. The builder doesn't have license to change the architect's design and the method of building. If he says, I want brick here, and I want timber there, and I want something else over there, that's what the builder has to do. So a builder is a faithful and true witness of the architect. And the architect entrusts to the builder to do the job. So that means, who made Adam and Eve? What does it say? God breathed into his nostrils the breath of... Who's doing the breathing? It's the Word. He's the Word. He's the one who brings or manifests these things into actual things. So when God walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening, who's walking? The Word. Giving them instructions, showing them how they are to do things and what they're to do. So the two components at creation were the Father and the Son. So maybe that adds a little bit more light when we come to verse 4, when it says, in him, who's the him? The Word, right, was life. And the life was the light of men. So if I did an equation from that verse, life equals what? Light. And we could write in there energy. Everything has a frequency, doesn't it? Everything has a frequency. And light comes into this space and it's created. Now, what happened, verse 14? What did this word do? And the Word was made what? Flesh and dwelt among us. That's like having the builder, Rob's the builder, he builds your house, then he comes in and lives with you. Can he fix everything?
Yes.
Yeah. He's the Word. In him is life, and he's the light of men. He's the one who charges up all living things. But he became flesh. He became just like us and has shown us the way. Okay, so last week we went through the first 4 days of creation, Genesis 1 through to I think it's about verse 18 or so. I'm quickly going to put the diagram up again so we can see what we're dealing with. So day 1, the waters were there and God said, let there be light. go onto a building site, you want to be able to see what you're doing. Second day, he made what?
Firmament.
Firmament.
The waters, divide the waters above from the
Waters above from the waters below. So he put this firmament between the waters. So there's waters above, waters below. Day 3, he made
The dry land,
the dry land and
the seas,
the vegetation.
yeah, the vegetation,
Yeah,
grass, seed-bearing herb,
right.
seed-bearing tree.
So he made the dry land, drained the waters out, pulled the plug. Some water was left in the
Low places.
low places, and then he filled it all with grass and herbs and everything else. Day 4, he made what?
Lights in the firmament,
Yeah, the sun, moon, and stars. And where did he put them? Inside the firmament. So he had one to rule the day and one to rule the night, which made everyone happy. And he made the stars also. And these for what? Signs, seasons, days, years. So we know how that works. So I just want to keep those. Actually, I'll make this one the moon. That's the moon. Okay. So that's how God made it. So there's waters above. Beautiful blue sky day today. I wonder what's above that sky. And he called these heavens. And the first heavens were where the birds fly. The second heaven was where the sun, moon and stars are. And the third heaven is where God dwells. And we saw that this was called the footstool of God. So God is just up there. He's not
very close.
multiple, what do they call them, light years away. He's right there, and the angelic hosts are there. And it says he looks down and he sees us like little grasshoppers. And I think I said I feel like it's like a two-way mirror, that he can look down and see everything, but we can't see out past the dome. Right, and he called this a tent or a curtain that was spread out that we can dwell under. And at the end of time, that tent or that scroll is going to be rolled up. Every eye shall see him. And you'll look up, you'll see him. It doesn't matter where you are on the earth, you'll see him. And this firmament covers a ring of earth. And that's where we get the expression, the face of the earth. Right? It doesn't talk about the body, it talks about the face. The Bible says that this earth is motionless, and it's the sun that revolves around to make day and night. Okay, so the sun's going around like this, the earth is like that, and what holds all the oceans in, you see these ridiculous pictures of flat earth with everyone going off the edge or whatever, there's a ring of ice all the way around that contains the water. Right? So if I have a container of water, no one's got a see-through one, but if I had a glass and I poured this into the glass, how would the water sit in the glass if I hold it upright? Is it going to be off at an angle, or
No, it's going to be
it's going to be level? And I could take a hose and pour water in, and someone could be 100 feet away with that hose, and when I hold that hose at a certain height, it's going to be exactly the same height down there. So if there's an incline, then the water's going to come right up, and they might have to be on a ladder, but wherever that water sits in that pipe, it's exactly level with here. That's what builders do. Called a builder's
Water level.
level. Right? It's a builder's level.
Anyone who use.
Right? Because it's accurate, it's dependable, you know, that's right. So if I poured water from here, knowing that there's an incline, what's the water go? That way?
No,
No, water always goes,
down.
finds its level. It goes down. Right? And it'll keep going into the creek, and the creek will keep going to another creek, and to another creek, to a river, and ultimately the river goes where?
Sea.
Into the ocean.
Sea
Yeah.
level.
sea level. Right? We never see the sea tilted. God said, I've set a boundary for the sea that it go no farther. In Job, farther. Okay? So that's the qualities of water. It always finds its level. And it always has to be contained in a container to do that.
Yep.
To find its level. So I can put it in a glass, I can put it in a bucket, I can put it in a swimming pool, I can put it in a lake, but it's always contained and it always remains level.
Can't fall on a sea.
Right. Okay, so let's understand how that goes. So that's one side. That's one thing that God teaches, is this here. Right? So this is God telling us this is how I did it. Now, what's the difference between a fact and a theory?
One's true, one's not.
How do we determine one is true? You have to have something.
Evidence.
Evidence. And what's the best evidence you can get?
You can see
Observation.
Something that someone has seen
and experience.
and now they're telling the story. This is what I saw.
Yeah.
Right?
Witness.
Okay.
Witness.
Who's the evidence? Who's the person who saw this?
Jesus.
Yeah, there's two, at least. Jesus and the Father. Are they credible witnesses?
Of course.
Yeah, because they do not lie. They do not change. They're the same yesterday, today and forever. So these are credible witnesses. You take them to court, you can be confident they're not going to lie in the stand.
The only trouble is atheists would dispute that.
Not fussed about atheists, not fussed about anyone else. All I'm determining is who is determining that this is what they did. Were they there? Yes, they were. Did they do it? Yes, they did. Right? So this is what they're saying in the book. This is the written testimony that what they're saying is credible. Okay? Now, if people say, oh, but there is no God, well, that's fine, you can have that view, but that's not what God says. He's saying this is what I did and this is how I did it. Did God make something from nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
From the
Why?
dust.
What do you-
From the dust, man.
yeah. Is dust nothing?
Something.
No, we just laughed at those scientists. Get your own dirt. Dirt was there, water was there. They're things. Right? Is God nothing?
No.
No. He's all powerful, everywhere present, knows everything. He's something. So if he's there with stuff, he can do things. Right, now we're going to look at this side of the equation. This is what I was taught, and you were all taught through school, through movies, through songs, through books, and all the rest of it by credible peer authorities and all that sort of stuff. And this side is called the Big Bang.
I wasn't taught that.
Sorry?
I wasn't taught that.
You weren't shown an atlas at school?
Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah, but not the Big Bang.
You probably won't listen.
You must have missed that day. Okay.
No, never.
This is what is taught in our education system of how did things begin, right? It's beginnings. And if you went online and put in how did the world begin, how did the universe begin, it would make a reference to this. But it's never referred to as the Big Bang fact. It's called the Big Bang theory. And a theory is based on what? Assumptions. Right? Assumptions. We could call this fact because we have the testimony of the Maker, the evidence of what he's done. We can just look around. That's the Bible actually says what God has made is an evidence that he exists, and it reveals even his inner thoughts and processes. Right? So we can call this creation fact, don't be scared to say that. Was anyone there at the beginning when this first started? No. Can you see that dot? Well, it's too big. Okay, so here's the definitions of the Big Bang. The Big Bang was the moment 13, so I'm going to put here 2024. The Big Bang was the moment when the universe began 13.8 billion years ago. From here to here took how long?
7 days.
Or less, 4 days.
Yeah.
4 literal 24-hour days. Is there a conflict between this one and this one? Okay. Our planet came into being 4.5 billion years ago. Man came into play about 200,000 years ago, a mere drop in the ocean. So from 200,000 years ago to today, that's how everything's been going. So this was the Earth was formed, and this was man.
Hurts my ears.
Sorry?
It hurts my ears.
Oh yeah, it's painful. Okay, so this dot is smaller than a pea. This dot is smaller than a grain of sand. This dot is smaller than an atom. Wow, that's pretty small.
So nothing exploded.
And within
Everything-
Within that dot was compressed all of the energy which became mass, that's Einstein's theory, all of the energy that we see around us throughout the whole cosmos was compressed down into this minuscule dot. Do you conceptualise that? No, but that's what it was. And then for some unknown reason, which is still a mystery, that dot exploded and out flew all the energy in all different directions from that point. Right? So it's all exiting out, all of that energy. And as that energy flew out, it was super hot. And it took all that time for that stuff to cool down and somehow come together to a grain of sand, to a handful of dirt, to a planet, which was all held together by a thing called gravity, which we'll look at in a minute. Right? As everything's flying out, it's forming together, it's whirling around, and the bigger ones started to have more gravity than the other ones and started to pull them into
Formations.
orbits around them. Earth is one of those congregations of minuscule atoms that has formed together and is orbiting the sun. So this is what's called heliocentric. Helio means sun. This one is geometric. That is, this one's still, and the sun is rotating, the moon is rotating inside the dome, and the stars are going round and round and round inside the firmament. And I'll show you in a minute how we know that. But this is the sun one. Okay, so with that being the case, we haven't even come out of this definition yet. As a tiny dense fireball. Oh yeah, so the Big Bang was the moment 13.8 billion years ago when the universe began as a tiny dense fireball that exploded. Most astronomers use the Big Bang Theory to explain how the universe began. But what caused this explosion in the first place is still a mystery. Second definition. Most physicists believe the universe was born in a Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. Well, at least they get the dates they're working together there. In it, the energy making up everything in the cosmos we see today was squeezed inside an inconceivably small space, far tinier than a grain of sand and even an atom. Do you know we didn't even know there were things called atoms till 1857? There was a guy who was just guessing there was something inside matter that moved. And it wasn't until I was a 3-year-old toddler that they were able to actually see an atom through a microscope. So this is all very modern stuff, these comparisons that we have. So the question is, can something come from nothing? Here's their own definitions. The most we can say with confidence at this stage is that physics has so far found no confirmed instances of something arising from nothing. Right? So this is a mystery with no evidence. It's a theory. What is the basic assumption that underpins the Big Bang Theory? It is there is no God. If there is a God and he is revealed, then what happens? We are subject to him. He has rules and principles that we must live by. He has authority over everything, and he is worthy of worship. He's God. What man did, said, we're turning our back on you, God, and we are going to develop a theory or a reason of how everything developed without you. Okay? Without you. And so man says, right, it's obvious what we see around us. Now we have to make sure we can explain it without God. Okay?
Don't get that blanket to scrunch the way she wants it to.
Sorry, yes, Tony.
I was just thinking about the creation. What about CERNs, where they got the kaleidoscope and they're trying to replicate the Big Bang Theory?
Yeah.
And if it goes wrong, it's going to be a really big bang and blow us all up anyway, with that kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
They're trying to recreate it to prove the Big Bang Theory, aren't they? Prove CERNs.
And that's what they have to do. They have to keep going back until they can have a full explanation that makes sense. Otherwise, it remains a theory. So that's where it's heading. According to the first law of thermodynamics, okay, this is a distraction, just ignore it. Just ignore it, because this information is pivotal, and we're not going to let a dog interrupt it. That's how the enemy works. He wants us distracted so we don't get the information. According to the first law of thermodynamics, this is scientists speaking, something cannot exist without being created from existing energy. Right? So under this theory, what do we have? A little pinprick full of all the energy. Where did the energy come from? It's assumed.
Yeah.
There is no God. So where did the energy come from? It's assumed. What was outside the energy pinprick? Nothing. Nothingness. And in fact, it was a vacuum, and as it exploded out into a vacuum. Right? So as these things are all swirling around, it's inside a vacuum. That's why they can zoom so far, because there's less friction. Okay, in a vacuum. So energy cannot be created or destroyed, and Einstein established that energy and mass, the two essence of existence, are essentially the same. So what did he write? He wrote E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass, the speed of light, 187,000 miles per second, times itself. That's his formulation.
I wonder I didn't understand that.
Do you think that might be part of the ploy? Make it so complex
Yes.
that you just can't imagine it, so you just go, oh, forget it. Is that what God says? God says, come, let us reason together. I want you to know me in a personal and loving and caring way. I want you to know that I made all this for you. That's my gift to you. So on the sixth day, I'll create something else. What did he create?
A rest.
Rest. Rest. He stopped working. We've just been made, say, I'm going to rest with you now. That's the peak of my creative capacity. Isn't that amazing? Right? So energy, you can't add or take it away from it. It's always been there. Well,
So that means something was always there, because energy can't be created or destroyed, so the energy did already exist.
yeah, and so that's why now a lot of astrophysicists and so on are saying, okay, before the Big Bang there must have been something or someone who intelligently designed all this. Right? See, this here, this side is random chance. If there's no God, then there's no designer. This side is intelligent design. We see order. We see patterns. We see systems. Okay? So what we have to do is we go through this side, right? And if people want to believe that, that's fine. I don't have an issue. And I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm just comparing the two. If you want to go down this track, then you have to maintain your assumptions consistently all the way through. Everything is random chance. There's no design. There's no order. There's no nothing. Okay. Another guy has written that there is a quantum foam when you combine the uncertainty principle with Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared. You get a mind-blowing result. Particles can come from nothing. That's the uncertainty principle there. Can come from nothing, but it still doesn't answer the question, where did the energy come from? Right? Starting from this point forward, okay, you might do that, but the question remains, where did the energy come from? Here's another one. In Schwinger's theory, if you apply a massive enough electrical field to a region of space that is completely empty, that space's quantum field will seize some of this electrical energy and create particle antiparticle pairs from nothingness. Okay? So if you have a massive electrical kaboom, then this is what can happen. Says who?
Yeah.
Huh?
Where's the electricity from?
Exactly. Where did the electricity come from? They can't explain how that exploded. So where's this massive jolt of electricity? That's Frankenstein. You know, she puts this thing with nuts and bolts and then bangs it and the thing comes to life. Okay. So there's the contrast. Now, heliocentric means that you've got the sun. I'm just going to write this part out. Under gravity in a minute. See, Charles. Okay, there you go. So this is saying now, okay, so here's the sun, which is a massive hot place zooming in space, but compared to other suns, it's tiny. go online and look up size of stars, just punch it in and you'll bring up a diagram, and a diagram will have a little tiny dot saying sun, and then you'll see all these massive, massive suns coming after it. Here's our sun. It's zooming through space at 450 odd thousand miles per hour. Here's the Earth. It's spinning itself at 1,000 miles per hour. It's rotating, orbiting the Sun at 66,617 miles per hour. That's an interesting number.
There's the giveaway.
Nothing mystic about that one. When the next pandemic hits,
That's the giveaway.
just see how many times 66, 33 and all those 13 type numbers come up. Okay, so it's zooming through space like that. We're zooming around, and we're zooming this way as well around the Sun. So that's why I go and get a diagram of that, and I'll show you a thing of it all flying around. And this solar system in the galaxy, right, is flying around. So we're in the Milky Way galaxy. The galaxy itself is flying around, they say, at 1.3 million miles per hour. Try and get a conceptual image of these things that are moving. But we can't feel anything. So 1.3 million is the whole galaxy moving. 450,000 is the solar system within that galaxy moving. 66.6 is the orbital thing that we're moving as a planet, and round to 1,000. It's a lot of movement. We feel nothing. Nothing. And they say, okay, well, it's like when you're in a car and you're doing 100 miles an hour and you can throw a ball up and catch it. It doesn't go flying behind you. You know, you can spill a drink and it'll go straight down onto your lap. It doesn't hit you in the chest. Right? So that is the own definition of how things work. Right? But notice you're in a confined space. You can be flying in a jet 7,000 kilometres an hour, throw a ball up and it'll still land, because everything's moving at the same speed. Right?
Because if you were in like a convertible car and you did that, it would go out the back. Or the water would.
Well, why? Because the wind would push it that way, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be enclosed. Open or enclosed? Everything that happens on here is in an enclosed environment. Open or enclosed? Open. Right? And the openness out here is a vacuum. It just gets more and more crazy, doesn't it? Okay, try not to go ahead of myself. Okay, gravity. And I pulled this out of a document. Why is the theory of gravity, although never proven, accepted as a fact? What did he start up? Why is the theory of gravity, although never proven, accepted as a fact? Because we can test gravity and see the effects. You can actually go on and see there's a mathematical formula to work it out. We don't know exactly what gravity is, but we can predict what it does with fair accuracy, so it is a theory. Right? So they're admitting gravity is a theory. Who was the guy who discovered gravity?
Newton.
Yeah. Under an apple tree in Trinity College in England back in the early or late 1800s, early 1900s, whatever it was. An apple fell down and he said, now, what made that fall? Okay. Here you are, you're all spinning around doing your thing. Have you ever played where you go around corners in the car when you're a kid and you slam into the kid next to you? Just normal cars, what do they call it? Anyway, I used to go to Luna Park when I was a kid, and there was a thing called the rotor. And you went in there and it had tall walls around it, open to the sky, and they start this thing. You had to put all your shoes and bits in the middle because that wasn't going around. And you'd sit there, and all of a sudden, bang, you're stuck on the wall. Clothes are all creeping up and trying to wipe your face and you smack yourself in the head. What's going on? What's causing that? There's a law called centrifugal force that pushes you out. So around this spinning dome at 1,000 miles an hour, there's a centrifugal force that's pushing everything out. So Newton's there going, okay, so we're on a spinning globe, centrifugal force has to be in play, so how did this apple not fly out into space when it fell off the tree? Oh, there must be a force that is greater than centrifugal force that is pulling that apple back in towards the centre of the earth. And we'll call that gravity. Right? The assumptions that people are working off to make this stuff work just keep getting added to and added to and added to. So, but that's the big one, there is no God. Now, what happens when an apple falls from a tree within this closed environment? What does it do? Falls to the ground. Why?
Because the earth is stationary.
The earth is stationary, but why does the apple fall to the ground?
It's denser than
Density than the air. Why does stuff float to the surface? It's lighter than the environment in which it is. So a plastic ping pong ball in a glass of water will pop to the surface. So this is gravity, this is density and buoyancy. You don't need gravity in an enclosed flat environment because everything falls. What's going to happen at the end of time? The sun is going to be made black, the moon's going to turn to blood, and the stars are going to do what? Fall to the earth. Which would suggest that there's an energy that's either keeping them up there or they're implanted in the firmament itself. Don't know, never been there. So we can see the conflicts between these two ideas. Now, we talked about making it confusing. Isaac Newton was the first to develop a quantitative theory of gravity, holding that the force of attraction between two bodies is proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Did you get it?
Only after a couple of years of study at school.
Yeah, right. Okay. Let's make it as complicated as possible so people can't get it. Then along came Einstein and with his theory of relativity. Okay.
And they call them geniuses.
Yeah. Sorry, babe, would you just mind running in and getting my little toy in my room? The globe, not... I just want to do a demo. Okay, so these, you can see there's a huge contrast. When I was showing this, it gave away all of that. So yes, you can accept that or accept that, either way, that's you. But once you see this and how everything makes sense, then all of a sudden there's none of that. And yet even within the body of Christ, thanks Darren, there are people who believe this but want to add this. Question. What does that do if you believe this to that?
It's a conflict.
You cannot serve two masters. You see, if God was there and said, this is what I did, and you say, no, God, we still believe this, but we're trying to reconcile this to this. What is that? What are you saying to the Father? We don't believe you. We don't trust you. We don't think that you're an honourable being that is worthy of worship. That's what you do. You're saying, really, I am God, and I will determine. They don't say they're atheists. They don't say they're agnostics. They say they're believers that Jesus died for them. But they're denying it. They have a form of God, godliness, but are denying the power thereof. What does Jesus say? To thus, turn away. Don't listen to it. Don't heed it, because what's this causing? Confusion. What's another name for confusion? Babylon. Right? Okay, so I'll just do that. Okay, so on this globe situation, what's the blue?
That's the seas.
That's the seas, all the waters. How deep are some of these seas?
Really deep.
Miles and miles deep. Right? Here's a figure that's going to blow your mind. One swimming pool, they've just done the Olympics. One Olympic-sized swimming pool, 50 metres long, 20 odd metres wide, maybe 2 metres, 3 metres deep at the best. Okay? How much water is there in an Olympic swimming pool, and what does it weigh?
30,000 litres?
2,500 tonnes. How much in a tonne? 1,000 kilos. 2,500 tonnes of water in a swimming pool. How many swimming pools are there in the world? How many swimming pools would make up all the oceans? It's tonnes, unimaginable tonnes amount. So what comes along? They say, okay, what holds everything on the spinning globe, right? So there's the spinning at 1,000 kilometres an hour, 1,000 miles an hour, spinning, spinning, spinning. Centrifugal force is pushing out, gravity is pushing in, and to hold all that water on a dome, which we can't replicate, by the way, but to hold all that water on the dome is the force of gravity. How hard would that force be to hold all that water on a dome? Because what would water normally want to do? Run to the lowest point, right? Or if there was no gravity, it'd be like a tennis ball, a wet tennis ball, water just flying everywhere, and it wouldn't last very long, right? But they're saying, no, it's held on by gravity. So think about that. How strong would it be to hold all that water? How strong would gravity have to be to hold that water and to stop it from zooming, flying out into space? And yet, a butterfly can land on water and take off. Right? A fish can be inside the water and swim through it. Now, the amount of force it would take to hold that water on a globe, that fish would just go smash. That butterfly would just get sucked to the bottom. Right? Couldn't survive. And yet we look around and we see everything, oh, that's normal. There goes a butterfly right now. There's a bird flying. And yet I can't feel any pressure on me, pulling me down. But if I jump up, what's going to happen? I'm going to come down, and that's gravity. No, that's density. I'm heavier than air. I'm not buoyant enough to keep jumping high. Right? So these are some of the anomalies, some of the things they can't explain. Right? And so they sort of get rid of it by making it into a foolish comment. Go down the beach and look, I can stand at the wreck down at Byron Bay, and I can see from Brunswick Heads down to nearly Ballina. Right? How far is that? 40 or 50 k's, and the horizon is dead flat. Go up in an aeroplane, which we've all done. Anyone not gone up an aeroplane? When you look out the window, see where the horizon is. If you're flying up from a globe, what should the horizon do? It should be
Bend
disappearing,
On either
right?
side.
But it's dead flat, and it comes up to eye level. Doesn't matter if you're 30,000 feet or 3 feet, the horizon is eye level. Right? How does that happen on a globe? Right? So they worked out using, I think it was Pythagoras' theory, that you can measure the circumference of a circle with a formula. Therefore, every, I forget it, what is it? 8 inches per mile squared, I think, by distance squared, is how much tilt you've got. Which means over a, say, 50 kilometre expanse, if you can see something at the end, like a lighthouse or something, that lighthouse should be 100 feet below the horizon. You shouldn't be able to see it. Because and don't forget, standing on a ball, it's not only dipping this way, that way, and that way. And they say, oh yeah, but you see ships go over the horizon. Now you imagine a ship with a mast, and it goes, we can't see it. Why? Because it's gone beyond the point, right, of our vision. It's perspective.
You still see it with a telescope.
You get a telescope out and you can bring the ship back. It's miraculous.
It hasn't gone over the edge.
Right? And the more powerful telescope you have, you can hold that thing for whatever the length of vision is of that device. Right? It runs out as well. Right? Now here's the thing, if you're going over a thing, and see if you can ever see it with a ship with a mast or with funnels or whatever, as it goes over the horizon, if it's on an angle out there, which way should the mast be facing relative to you? It should go over on an angle leaning down, shouldn't it? But it never does. It's still straight up when it goes over. When it comes out this way, what should you see? You should see the mast tipping forward and going over like that. It never does. It's always flat. Right? So again, there's these things that can't be explained. Now, I don't try and argue with people who have this view because I held it myself and I thought it was truth. Right? And most people, when you come to them and make some inquiries, what's the reaction?
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah, you're an idiot. Flat Earth, only morons would believe in flat Earth. Well, I don't mind being called a moron for God. In fact, Jesus said, be a fool for Christ. Okay, I'm a fool, no problem. But explain to me these things and give me an answer. Next week we're going to look at, we've been looking at the cosmos. Next week we're going to look at life, evolution. How does that turn out? Alright, so that's the water one. Now, let's just spend a few moments, that's gravity, looking at Polaris. Who knows what Polaris is? Polaris. It's the North Star because it points always north. Have you ever seen a photo that looks like this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Time lapse.
Time lapse. This is Polaris, celestial north, due north, a little bit off, but it's fine. What are these?
The
Stars.
stars.
They're the stars rotating around Polaris. This point on the dome is north. Where does God sit? On the sides of the north. That's where his throne is. If that is fixed over the North Pole on land, then this photo would be generated by all of these stars inside the dome, going round, round, round. Over a 24, 36 hour period, you'd get a photo like that, time-lapse photo. Polaris, this is what someone wrote, not a believer in this, but a believer in astronomy. says only about 0.7 degrees separates Polaris from the north central pole. So let's have just a little fraction. The pivot point directly north of the Earth, around which the stars circle daily. Here's my question. What? You say you believe in this, sun going at that speed, we're going around the sun, everything's moving, and you're saying everything, all the stars revolve around the North Star. How?
It's just ridiculous.
He's saying that's what we observe, but try and get it in your head that we're zooming around. What else is zooming around? Polaris is on the move. It's zooming out. Are we keeping up? Are we dropping back? Are we turning left or right to Polaris? No, we're right under Polaris. So that's good if I'm stationary, but what if I'm rotating around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour? Is Polaris going to stay due north? That means the tilt of my axis always has to be like that. And at the same time, we've got the moon zooming around the Earth. Okay, here's something to think about. You're in a car. You're coming up behind a semi-trailer truck. It's not going as fast as you. You want to overtake. What do you have to do to overtake a semi-trailer on a road? Accelerate. So you have to speed up 10, 15, 20 k's an hour. When you get to the front, what do? Decelerate, but stay enough in front. If you want the truck to pass you, what do you have to do? Decelerate even further and come back behind the truck and then accelerate to maintain the same speed. That's the moon around the Earth. Right? It's not going at a fixed speed. Because when it comes up to this side of the Earth, it has to speed up to pass it, and then it's got to maintain it for a little while, and then it has to deaccelerate to go behind it, and so it's constantly changing. But what are we told? Oh no, the moon is fixed, and it simply moves at 2,700 kilometres in its orbit around the Earth. Well, impossible. You know, if I pulled out next to that truck and maintained that speed, I'd never get to the front. I'd never fall behind. I'd just stay right next to him. Crazy stuff. Okay, so this is Polaris water. Up until a couple of years ago, there was a series of stones in an American state called Georgia, called the Georgia Guidestones. Looked a bit like that place in England, Stonehenge. Right? It was 5 stones like that. It had another stone in the middle and a capstone joining them all together. Made out of granite. A number of things written on it, like we need to maintain the Earth's population at 500,000.
Million.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, 500,000.
500,000, which means 7.5 billion have to get taken out of the thing. We've got to maintain the Earth so we can have sustainable life. And they said, who drew these and who set them up? Because it sort of seemed to happen overnight. They just appeared. Okay. And the guy's name was I'm pretty sure it was Chris.
Christian or something.
Anyway, look it up. But there was some guy who wrote a book, and they say someone did that under his name. But if you take the initials, it's RC. I didn't write it down. I should have. But the implication is this is the agenda for the one world system. And who's in control? The RC.
Yeah.
On one of these stones, a hole had been bored through the stone at eye level. So you could stand there at any time of day or night, look through that hole, and do you know what you see on the other side? Polaris. anytime, day or night, you'd see Polaris. How can that possibly happen if everything's spinning and zooming through space? Impossible. And yet there it is. It's like they spit in your face
Yes.
and say, we're going to put this up as an evidence that the only possible way that could happen is like this, that you can be anywhere on it and see Polaris, right? And you just accept this like a flock of dumb sheep. Right? Most people say, you're an idiot to believe that. Someone knows that this is true, and what's his name? The devil believes that there's a God and he trembles. He knows this is true. This is his ultimate reality. This is part of the big lie, that God sends strong delusion that they will believe the lie. Most people don't even want to think about this, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to look into it, because they've just accepted it from their authority figures as they've grown up since birth. One thing I find really interesting is when you go onto podcasts, even Christian podcasts, and what's sitting in the background? One of these little babies. What are they saying? We're part of this system.
Well, it may be
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. It's
I
sitting
thi-
there out of ignorance.
some
Yeah.
of it may be.
Even Wall of Ice on his same
Yeah.
thing, he's got one sitting there.
Right.
They just don't know.
Okay, it may be innocent, but is it truth? Is it real?
No, it's not.
No. So just as my mum and dad said Father Christmas and the Easter Bunny, right, it was in innocence, but was it a lie? Yeah, because one day I grew up and found there was no Santa Claus, no Easter Bunny, and a little bit of devastation, and a little chink in the veracity of my parents' authority. You mean you've been telling me this lie for 10 years? No, there is no Santa Claus. I don't have to be good. I can be bad and still get presents. Yeah. That's right.
Hiding the lie in plain sight.
Yeah, that's right. So this is the contrast. Do you find this interesting?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want a little bit more?
Yes, please.
Okay. Only because you said please. So we've done gravity, we've done Polaris, and Georgia Guidestones. Okay. That one there, I just went, what? How can you say that? That the stars circle daily. Okay, anomalies. Who's ever heard of these little beauties? Oop arts. Out of place artifacts. Things that are out of place. Okay. What does science, specifically geology, when they see this sort of thing, think Grand Canyon and all that sort of stuff, all these layers, they say this layer was 1 million years ago, this was 500,000, right, and they go up to 25,000 at the top. All different layers that have been laid down by different eons of time. Okay? Nothing is ever mentioned that these lines are all flat. There was no erosion between 1 million and 500,000 to have it all dipping up and down. No, it's been laid down flat. And the next one's the same and same and same. And the top one might have a few bumps and some pieces on it. These are geological what? Formations. Right? This is how it's been laid down. They come across a petrified tree and it's stuck, the trunk of this tree is stuck in the middle of these. That's an oop part, an out of place artifact. What is that tree doing sitting upright in the midst of the geological formations? Impossible. How do you explain it? We can't. So what do? Do you modify the time frame in which these were laid down? Oh no, that's exact. Then what do? We don't know. Too hard basket.
Let's not talk about it anymore.
No. And if you discuss that, then you're an idiot.
They found
Okay.
picks and swords and all things in these layers that they say.
Yeah. Okay, here's a geological anomaly. We've got the footprints of dinosaurs. Let's say it looks like that. That's the dinosaur's footprint, and it's huge. You know, so they say, okay, from that footprint, this thing must have been 40 feet high, 35 feet long. And by the impress at the beginning, we know it must have had a big backside because it was working forward. Right? The dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago. Extinct from then on. Then they come along a riverbed in Colorado or Wyoming or somewhere, and here impressed into the same dinosaur foot is a human foot. And they go, wow, what's going on here? And then they find human footprints outside just the same. They say, wow, how can they all be in the same place? Because this is in mud. It would mean that the person had to come along after the dinosaur to put the footprint inside the dinosaur's footprint while it's still wet, and then they dry. Conclusion, maybe these guys were chasing this guy, or maybe they were all running away from the same thing. We don't know. That is an UPA. So what do you say? How did that footprint get there? Don't know. Don't want to know. Don't talk about it. In fact, make sure the Smithsonian Museum buys up everything that has this sort of evidence in it so we can go into denial. Crazy. If we saw that here, we would say there must have been some event that caused that. Worldwide flood. The Bible says everything on the face of the earth was buried up to 15 metres, say, above the highest hill. Now, they didn't have the same someone help me, geographic features as we have today, with the tall bare mountains of rocks. It all came after the flood when everything was lifted up, water all ran away. That's why you can... Topography, thank you. That's why you can find seashells on the top of Mount Everest. It's all lifted up, it's all part of the basin. Okay, so we believe, under this, that there was a worldwide flood which covered everything on the face of the earth up to 15 metres high. So the only things that could survive were some birds, some fish, maybe some insects floating around. But it says that the waters of the deep, fountains of the deep, came through under pressure, and the waters above came through the windows of heaven to the ground. That's how the whole thing can be flooded and contained. On this, you can't have a worldwide flood. Because what's out here?
Space, supposedly.
And space is a
Vacuum.
vacuum, right? So there's no water coming down from there. It must have been in here, but under this theory,
The edges and splash back at us.
There you go. And the fountains of the deep could have come up, but what else would have come up? Lava, hot stuff. Okay. And you can't hold the amount of water that would be required to cover this whole sphere, 15 metres plus. We just did the swimming pool, you know, so there's just going to be, and where does the water go? Well, Hey, rushes off. So what do they say? Well, it must have been a localised flood. It only happened in Turkey. It's just local. Wherever it was, it had to be contained in order for that water to come to a level. Okay. Now what you just said brought up another thing. In a closed environment, it doesn't matter what's happening inside or out. You're in an atmosphere dense environment that is contained. Over on this side, here's the Earth, and we have atmosphere around the Earth, 5 different levels of density. So closer to the Earth, denser the atmosphere. But once you get outside to what they call the exosphere, where the atmosphere somehow mingles with a vacuum into outer space, what we call space, and it's a vacuum, has never been demonstrated to be able to be done. None of this has ever been demonstrated. That's why it's called theories. The theory of gravity, the theory of relativity, the theory of this, the theory of that. They're all theories because they've never been able to be reproduced. Right? This has. We have things like diving bells. Go underwater, they're open underneath and they have the airlock inside and they can breathe and function and cook food and do whatever they want to do. There's no issue with gravity or all that sort of stuff. They're just there like normal but under the water. Right? I think things like snow cones are like a little in-your-face thing. Yeah, there it is. Turn it upside down. Yeah. But in a snow cone, where does all the stuff settle? On the bottom. You've got to turn it upside down to get the snow happening. Right? So that, again, we can demonstrate that. But here, there is no conceivable way of containing a vacuum unless it's in a container. So you can take a container full with air or whatever and you can suck it all out and get a vacuum, right? But they have to have the container. Why is not that atmosphere getting sucked out into the vacuum of space? And how can you come to the edge of the limit where it's really small atmosphere and a lot of vacuum and not get sucked out into space? You can't do it. It has to be contained. And yet these are things that people say, oh, I don't know. But I believe it's true. Why? Because the scientists tell it is. Because why? Oh, well, we've been to the moon. We've been outside of this into here, right? And we know that that's what it is. Well, we watched a little clip the other day of this guy out on one of the stations of ISS, whatever it is, and he's outside, and he's holding on with one hand to the space station. The space station's travelling at 172,000 miles per hour. Now he's not inside the space station, he's outside the car holding on to the reversing mirror, and the car's going 200 miles an hour. How long is he going to hold on for? Not long. And here's this guy out there holding on with one hand, doing 172,000 miles per hour, and he gets to the door of the space station and it's not even solid, it's like a canvas thing with clips on it and it's flopping everywhere and hitting him on the head, and finally he pulls in and pulls the thing into position. Now if they're doing 172,000 miles an hour, that thing's going to be going so fast, he's not going to be able to pull it in.
Some of those footages you can see the little bubbles.
Yeah.
Because they're all filmed underwater.
Incredible. So I am passing judgment. I'm calling this ridiculous and this correct. Once you see this and challenge this and really think about it, once you've seen it, you can't go back. Right? It's simple. That answers every question we have. This adds question to question to question. It adds lie to lie to lie. Ever told a lie and been found out, and then you've got to try and retrace your steps?
Yeah.
Right?
More and more and more.
Yeah. And then you make up new lies to back the other lie, and then someone says, yeah, well, if you did that, what about this? Oh, that was right, that was this. Yeah. There it begins. Right? That's what's happening here. Okay. Final things. Got the potatoes on board? Okay. One of the biggest anomalies, and I'll leave you to go and check this one out for yourself. Everything to do with flying. Get in an aeroplane and they're told to do what? Fly straight and level. How do you do that on a globe? You fly straight, where do you fly to? Out of space. Out of space. Right? You can stay 330,000 feet off the ground, you're going to be going over like this, aren't you? That's not straight. It might be if you're heading towards somewhere. So flying. What about flight paths?
Yes.
Have you seen the anomalies where someone's flying over the Pacific heading for San Francisco, which is dead ahead, and the lady's pregnant, she goes into labour, so they divert up to some other place way up north, in Asia or somewhere, and then they fly back down. On a globe, that's what you have to do. You're flying from here to here, you've got to go across that way. When you come to the globe, to the flat Earth, they're flying from, say here,
There's straight lines they fly.
to Los Angeles is a straight line like that. But they had to divert somewhere.
On a globe, a lot of things are dog legs. Trips, I say, why are they going all the way up there? And then as soon as I see it on the flat Earth, it's a straight line.
Straight lines.
There. It's like every single one of them.
It's the obvious economical way to fly is in a straight line. Hassle getting from here to Mount Nardi, because you've got to go up there and across there and then back up there, because that's where the roads are. But from here to Mount Nardi is like 5 minutes flying in a straight line, not impeded by anything else. So flight paths, and go online, there's heaps of stuff about flight paths online. And the other part, this is the killer, in the manuals that pilots get about flying, there's the statement, presume a stationary flat Earth. So it's the same for engineers when they're building things. They never allow for the curvature of the Earth. Assume a flat, stationary plane. Imagine that. Now how does that work? You're a pilot and you've got to land on a landing strip that's travelling at 1,000 miles an hour, right? Going around like this, so that you've got to go fast enough to get ahead of it and fly back in to land on it. And so your airspeed can't be less than 1,000 miles per hour, otherwise that thing's going to pass you by. And that's what would happen outside of a contained vessel. Out here, that's what would be happening. You could take a helicopter up and they say, oh, no, you can't do that because the atmosphere is travelling the same. Oh, okay. So up where it hits the vacuum, it's still travelling at 1,000 kilometres an hour. Oh, no, it backs off because like on the globe, the points north and south are travelling slower than the equator. The equator's zooming around. But if you live up north in Greenland, the races at the Olympics, when they have a race over 100 metres, which is the length of the straight, they have a staggered start because the ones on the outside are disadvantaged because if everyone runs at the same speed, they'll be left behind. So they calculate a staggered start. We don't do that over here. So it's impossible what's going on. Alright, I hope that's a little bit of information. I now want to just quickly close with two examples. Okay, let's go to Book of Joshua. And we're looking in Joshua chapter 10. Verses 12 to 13. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. So here's Joshua fighting the Amorites, who God has said wipe them out. They must have had Nephilim blood in them. And the sun's going down. And Joshua says, I need more time. Got them right where we want them. We don't want to stop for the night. And so he stands up before the people of Israel and he says, Sun, stop where you are. And moon, stop where you are. And what happened? And the sun stood still, which would mean what? Prior to that it was moving. And the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? Is Jasher a book in the Bible?
No.
No. But they're quoting it. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it that the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man. For the Lord fought for Israel. So God did what Joshua asked him to do. I mean, I'm on a revolving sphere flying through space, and it's going around at 1,000 miles per hour, blah, 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 all that. And I'm on a battle in a little place over here, and I need more light, and I say to God, God, can you stop the sun so I can finish the job? What does God do? Puts the brakes on. What happens to everything inside a car travelling at 1,000 miles an hour when it stops? It comes to a complete stop. Everything moves forward at that speed. That's the end of the earth, folks. There's nothing left, the water's gone, everything's gone, flying off at 1,000 miles an hour. It's finished. What happens on this model when Joshua says, can you halt the sun? God says, okay, the sun's fine this way, I'll just stop it. Doesn't impact on anything down here, it just stops the sun, but he also stops the moon because they're in sync. So he stops the sun for about 24 hours. He says, right, there you go, mate. Cool. That's one. How many witnesses do we need to make something true? Okay, there's another one. Oops. And now it's playing up. Sorry, it's going to be probably down in Samuel. Okay, 2 Kings, chapter 20. 2 Kings chapter 20 and verses 9 to 11. So Hezekiah was the king of Israel at the time. So did I give you 2 Kings chapter 20 verses 9 to 11? Okay, you're all happily reading away. Verse 9. And Isaiah said, the sign shalt thou have of the Lord, that the Lord will do the thing that he hath spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or go back 10 degrees? Right, they had a sundial. As the sun went round, this thing went round. Do you want it to go forward 10 degrees or back 10 degrees? And in verse 10, Hezekiah answered, it's a light thing for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. So he's saying it's a light thing to push the sun forward a little bit, but let the shadow return backward 10 degrees. Have you read this before? Well, you have because you've read it. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backward, by which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. Okay, we're on this thing over here. Same again. So I don't want it to go forward, I want it to go back. What happens to this ball to make that sundial go back as it's zooming around?
It's got to stop and then reverse.
It's got to stop and reverse.
Well, everyone's going to fall.
So if it wasn't enough for everyone to get flying off that when it stops that way,
Yeah.
just to make sure you come off, he's going to flick it back that way.
We all need bungee ropes.
Have you ever been on one of those carousel things in the kids' park? You get half a dozen people and you flick it as fast as you can. And then the main thing you're trying to do what? What are you trying to do? Yeah, get people to fly off so you can laugh at them.
Oh.
Isn't that why you play that game? So you can hang on. And you've got kids hanging on. And I got whipped when I was water skiing one time in one of those tubes. And I was back like that and it was nearly breaking my neck, and I could sense the water was about an inch under my head, and I thought if my head hits the water, my neck's going to snap. You know? And the guys in the boat didn't care, they were just all laughing. So it's got to go in reverse. Okay. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Especially when some little man on the earth says do it. Okay, I'll do it right now. Lord, make the sun go back 10 degrees to prove the point. Didn't feel a thing. Okay? Because that means nothing. Just nobody. But there is a reason for these guys. So God says, okay, not only can I stop it going that way, I can reverse it back this way, 10 degrees. 2 witnesses. If this is possible on this, impossible on that. And the difference is that's the difference. There is a God. He created everything. He's in control of everything. And the outcome of that is we can trust him with everything. So when this father says don't worry, if you're worrying, you're being unfaithful to this God. You might as well go and live over in this camp. If you're saying that I believe in this God and that that's his system, but I still want to maintain this God, well then I'm in the wrong camp. And it might not be a conscious thing that I'm doing. I might be doing it in ignorance. But God says, don't be ignorant. I've given you the truth. It's contained, everything you need is contained in this book. Do you believe the book? Do you believe the word? Or do you want some of the book that suits me and the rest I'll do myself? I don't mean to keep steering your direction. That's the choice. And the scripture says, choose you this day whom you will serve. If it be God, good. If it be Baal, well, that's up to you. But for me and my house, we're going to do what, babe? Serve the Lord. Doesn't matter what comes. And there is stuff coming that is going to demand answers. Stick with it. All right. Father God, we acknowledge your greatness, that you are the King of the universe, that you rule over all created things, and that your word is truth, and that you sent your Son, the word of truth, to die for us. Father, just help us to comprehend these things and to be brave and to share them when we get an opportunity, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.